some real good background information, Dr. Troughton.
I have.
You have one. You have this.
Yeah.
Great. Does anyone need a copy? I have a few left. So why don't you share them amongst yourselves? Okay, my name is J.P. Lee. I live at 96 North Street. And what I have here is a digestion of some of the data from the State Department of Education, specifically as it relates to North Reading and the peer community, the peer group. If you all recall the benchmarking study that was done recently, probably the best piece of information from that study was that they had identified a set of towns in the Commonwealth that shared similar demographics as North Reading across 20 different categories. So when we compare North Reading to these towns, and how they're spending their money on education versus how we're spending our money, we get a pretty good assessment of where we stand with like communities. So we're not comparing us to the Lawrences or Bostons or Lowells, because that would totally skew things out of the way. So what's on this chart, the first part is a table, the data that I used. And you can go over to the Department of Education, you can download this data yourself and do whatever you want with it. It comes in a spreadsheet. There's probably like 18 towns here aside from North Reading that had data. This is preliminary data for 2007, so it's identified where the data comes from and what it means. It's a snapshot. It's the most recent snapshot of information we have. On a per pupil basis, so it doesn't matter how big or how small a community is, because the playing field is somewhat leveled now. Okay? This data shows what, on a per pupil basis, each town spends for administrators, teacher salaries, operation and maintenance, and the total amount spent. And I put a little asterisk there because there are a lot of different sources that come into play there where the money gets funded from. Okay, and this is, again, right on the DOE website. On the very first page, there's a somewhat, possibly a complicated chart. I'm not going to really talk too much about that. I'll be available afterwards if anyone wants to know the nitty-gritty of it, but it's another way of looking at that table of numbers. It's called a profile chart, and for each community, for each line on this chart, in the table above, there's a little line chart that describes how that community performs against those categories. Okay? I circled North Reading. Just look at its profile, the shape of that line compared to all the other communities. We're right down at the bottom. What that means, at a very high level, is that we're really not spending as much as our peer communities on administration, teacher salaries, operations and maintenance, and the total spend. Okay? This brings me back to something that Dr. Troughton mentioned at the school committee budget meeting, is that lots of the other communities around the state, well, when they have budget cuts, there's a lot more headroom there, right? They can make cuts, and it's not really killing them. In North Reading, we're already at the bottom of our peer group, so any further cuts really cut down into the bone. So I just want you to take a look, flip your page, and look at the bar chart, because that's a little easier to look at. And for each of those 4 categories, there's a separate bar chart there. And I've highlighted where North Reading is for each chart. And, well, what's the trend you can see here? We're at the bottom, okay? So when you hear people, this beats rumor and innuendo and things you might read in various letters to the editors or from other people in the community, that when they say, we're top-heavy, we got way too much money in the administrators. Well, this tells me, well, on the administration spending, the top right chart, we're 4th from the bottom of the communities that are very similar to us. So, you can't tell. Numbers don't lie. And it is a snapshot. It's preliminary information, but it's a heck of a lot better than rumor and innuendo. So I want you, hopefully this will be up on the En route website, maybe in the next week or so. Okay, so it's a resource. So you can use this to talk to people. When you hear misinformation, we can back it up with some numbers. And these don't lie. So, take this, internalize it, and use it moving forward. That's about all I need to say here. I'll take a question, but I want to definitely get back to the topics that we need to talk with our legislators about. But I thought this is a good place to get a little bit of awareness out to the folks who really have a stake in this.
Thank you, JP.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Brad or Bruce?
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
sure. Is it based on what you just talked about?
Yes.
Sure, why don't you?
Okay. Laura Lichner, 174 Harvard Street. I'm curious, is similar information available on the town side of the budget? Because I think it would be very...
I have no idea.
Okay, if it were, it would be extremely informative to look at where North Reading ranks among its similar cities on its, if you broke this down on the town side, not just on the...
Right, well, the benchmarking study
Mhm.
that
So
the
if
town
you
spent
compare this
a
with
non-trivial
that.
amount of money on is available. It's in the library, right? And I believe you could probably hit up one of the selectmen, probably Mr. Mosseri, who would furnish more of that information to you.
The benchmarking study is on the North Reading Public Schools website as well.
So that will have information on what we spend on our town administrator,
everything.
you know, compared to
Everything.
everyone else. Okay.
Yes, it does.
You could also look at the Department of Revenue website and
Yeah. If you go
Mass
to
State-
DOR, look at DLS, they have
Yeah.
a variety of reports and
they have a lot for general government, and then the Mass Municipal Association, while some of that data is purchased and probably purchased by the town, you might be able to look at it from the Human Resources Director that
there is some,
does
I think
salary
you may also,
studies.
there's certain pieces that may, like a login piece to get
Yeah.
to the next level.
They do salary studies.
Just a clarification, what's on the school website is only that portion of the
Right.
benchmark study related to the schools. We clearly do not wish to get into a
Right.
interdepartmental discussion.
We did ask to have the entire presentation put on the North Reading town website, and we could ask to have it put back there again.
Because it would speak to the rumor and the innuendo saying that we're top-heavy on the school side, but there's not too much discussion on if we're top-heavy elsewhere or if we're 13th from the bottom across the board in all of our budgets.
Good point. Thanks. Any questions?
Would any- either of you be interested in changing political parties so that you could be in positions of influence? That aside.
You're not gonna wait for me.
We thank you, and you do a phenomenal job for North Reading. We wish that you would get more recognition and more, the good, strong ideas you bring for cities and towns. And I guess maybe you've covered this already, but how, the Sauguses of the world, the Tewksburys, the Stonehams, they're all in the same place as North Reading. Are there, the constituents of their legislators, are they not as involved as we are? Are they not screaming as loud, or are their legislators not listening? Why, there are more suburbs like North Reading in Massachusetts than cities and towns, so, aside from the disproportionate population.
There
Why
are
are they not hearing it?
communities, I want to say it was Northbridge, their library, they closed the library.
Yeah.
I mean, so there are places that are even sort of further.
But why are their legislators not hearing that and taking?
Well,
some
the legislator from,
action?
because I know legislator specifically Northbridge, is one of my colleagues is serves on, one of the public colleagues. Yeah, he's on the same page, he's been out talking about the same, Saugus took advantage of getting into the GIC. We actually let them in early, as I recall, we did, especially so they could be before the deadline, to try to give them some tools, to get there. So.
Let me just offer, Marcy, though, first of all, thank you for your kind words, and we've always enjoyed working with you, but let me suggest to you that it isn't always what party you're in, because the Senate President represents Plymouth, and that's been one of the communities hardest hit by the cuts in 02 and 03. And even though she has been motivated to try to help, it still hasn't happened. So it doesn't always depend necessarily on the party. It's more the critical mass that we need to get to. And sometimes it's because people follow leadership, and we would argue that they should more follow the will of the community. Sometimes it's because we don't do as good a job as we might of making a coherent ask from the community level. In other words, we put the ideas on the table, but sometimes all of the communities aren't united in their request, whereas the cities and the urban communities tend to vote as a block, cohesively as a block. And so sometimes, even though they may be fewer in number, they certainly are if you compare them to all of the suburban communities, the fact that they stick together and move forward is what defeats us. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that's why an organization like this is critical, because if we can coordinate the ask, not only in terms of motivating people, but in the substance of it, then we can get there. I mean, one of the great problems, and you've heard me say this before with Chapter 70, is if we put representatives of 200 communities in a room and say, is there a problem with Chapter 70? Probably 190 of them will say yes. And if we say, how do we fix it, we'd probably get 70 or 80 different ideas. And that's one of the biggest problems in trying to change the formula. So it's a combination of things, but coordinating the ask and having people from those communities that people represent ask them is critical. So it isn't always as black and white as it might seem.
Before we allow folks to ask more questions, and I think it's great because it brings up a lot of good points, I want to be specific about getting to the close so that I can make sure that I ask my ask before more people leave. And not only are we going to ask specific asks of you, but I'm going to ask specific asks of everyone in this audience, because I'm sure you're all thinking, you know, well, what is North Reading United for Education going to do? And what is Stand for Children then going to do? Well, guess what? We're all the same people. And we can't do this work without everyone sitting in that chair and without hundreds more people in the community helping us, because we're the same people. The Stand for Children members are the North Reading United for Education members. We've been a little busy locally, and we don't have enough people to work at the state level. We're doing the best we can, and just since October, when Megan Sarah, who's the director of Stand for Children, came here and sat in these chairs, we have over 30 Stand for Children members, but they're not active. So we need everyone who signed up to be active. What I mean by that is actively pursuing what our legislators just said, working with us regularly so we can reach out to Hamilton Wenham and North Andover and Lynnfield and Gloucester. 6 busloads of people from Gloucester came to the Stand for Children rally and squished into Bruce's very little room. Most of them couldn't even get in. There wasn't enough room. I don't want 6 busloads of North Reading people to have to go to the State House. So if we don't fix the problem at the state level, we will be in busloads, like Gloucester already has. So please don't leave here thinking to yourself, I wonder what Stand for Children's going to do. I wonder what North Reading United's going to do. It's like the John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Well, you know what, I'm not John F. Kennedy, but the quote works here. Don't ask what North Reading United or Stand for Children is going to do from here based on what we just learned. What are you going to do to help us get out of this mess? My first question is, will you join Stand for Children and be part of the solution? All you have to do is go over to that table and pick up a brochure that looks like this, and it's a tear-off. They ask for a minimum donation of $25 to become a STAND member, but you don't have to write the check. We still need the work. But I'm going to ask you to do that so that maybe by September we'll have 60 to 80 Stand for Children members, so that when we need a concrete ask and reach out to communities, we have 60 people that are willing to do it and not 6. So that's the first thing. So become a STAND member. So walk away with a brochure, fill out the check. The address is here in Cambridge to send the check back to. We'll add you to our list, and you can be an ongoing advocate. The other ask is, you know, our local leaders have made some progress funding the status quo budget, the Priority 1 budget, and the Priority 2 budget. And so what we need to do at town meeting on April 7th at 7 o'clock is protect all that work that's been done. So that Kara is going to talk to you about a 10 Friends campaign so that you walk out with an assignment today if you didn't already get one on Monday night. So Kara, can you talk about that?
This is kind of to address the issue of